So you wanna roll a rogue? Well, here's what you need to know. A rogue is a clever, cunning trickster that specializes in underhanded tactics. Not to be confused with Rouge, which is the anthropomorphic bat that smelly kid from high school not so secretly wanted to fuck. Whatever a rogue does, they do it fast, they do it sneaky, and most importantly, they do it from behind.
Rogues do it from behind!
There are two, and only two, types of rogue players. Dark, broody edgelords who need to be dragged kicking and screaming into helping the party, and kleptomaniac murder hobos who should really be playing Skyrim instead. But you keep them around anyway, because they're the Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades, skill monkey to end all skill monkeys. At level 1, you start trained in a bare minimum of 9 skills. That is over half of the skills in the game that matter. On top of that, you get double the number of skill increases and skill feats of most other classes. What's that? Oh, skill feats are those things you forget you have unless you're a demoralize or grapple build. I almost think rogues get too many skills. Even with double the skill increases, you won't have enough to bump them all to expert by level 7, which means you won't be able to get them all to master by level 15, much less legendary by level 20. Best to focus on a handful of skills you plan to use regularly and try to quiet that OCD part of your brain that needs to maximize stats. Trained proficiency is enough for most skill actions anyway, which I suggest you brush up on because rogues and skill actions go together like Congress and insider trading. Specifically, you'll be using these to set up your other core feature and the reason most people pick this class: sneak attack. When you hit an off-guard creature, you deal extra damage. As long as you're using the right weapon and they're not immune to precision damage and Mars isn't in fucking retrograde. Fortunately, rogues get a ton of ways to ensure they get their sneak attack off. Doing a little roly-poly, jumping in their face and screaming a bloogie-woogie-woo, or just flipping them off. There's also good old-fashioned flanking, made all the easier by high mobility, an assortment of maneuvers familiar to Dark Souls players, or just being in the general vicinity of your pals. If you're more... Consider these feats that make getting the drop on your enemy that much easier, culminating in literal, inexplicable magic. Unlike those lesser classes that just get precision damage and nothing else, rogues eventually learn to tack on even more debuffs to whoever they shiv. Feats will give you more options to add to the list, from which you'll eventually get to pick 2, capping off with the I'm bored now button for when you're ready to speedrun the final dungeon. There's so much more rogues can do with all these features that it can honestly be a bit overwhelming. So in order to help compartmentalize that information, I'm going to relate them to their subclass. Your racket doesn't limit you that much in feat choice, but it does help guide you in finding a build that fits certain playstyles. For example, if you'd like to be a cunning manipulator who ensures all goes according to Keikaku, there's no better racket than the Mastermind. You can make an enemy off guard just by identifying them, which is made that much easier by letting you switch your key stat to intelligence. Analyze Weakness pairs great with Mastermind, along with any feats that automate planning ahead so you don't actually have to be a genius to play one. You might still need a little bit of brains if you want to use the feats actually linked to the Mastermind though. They're not bad, I just haven't watched enough Rick and Morty to comprehend their full potential. The Ruffian might be a better fit for a big, dumb goon like me. No, not that kind. Less weapon restrictions and better armor makes it easier to jump straight into bashing skulls in, especially if you take the feats to let you skip the setup because Papa Paizo didn't want you throwing a tantrum in the supermarket again. With strength as an optional key stat, you're better equipped to use athletics to knock them down, keep them down, and kick them while they're down. Or, since you're trained in intimidation, you could try to demoralize them, either by spending an action to lower their saves, or recreating whatever the fuck Patrick Bateman was doing in this scene. I've never watched American Psycho. How do I have a film degree without watching most mainstays of American cinema? Anyway, you could also just crit to scare him. The Ruffian is all about making the rogue more straightforward, including debilitations that are just flat buffs to attack and damage rolls. If you like the idea of a spicy fighter, you know which racket to pick. Scoundrels break ankles like LeBron at a neighborhood pickup game. It's not nearly as effective as it sounds. Your main benefit just turns a successful feint into a crit, the debilitations it gains are situational at best, and the capstone for deception-based class feats is just a shitty substitution jutsu. I do like the feats that tack on extra debuffs to fainting, though. Just not enough to warrant a character whose entire shtick is just... Thieves are the vanilla rogues. No alternate key stats, no extra ways to make someone off guard, with skills anyway. They do add their dex to damage though, so it's the best subclass by default. Your crits make your opponent off guard, your debilitations either guarantee your next sneak attack or buff it, and you can make disarm checks somewhat almost useful thanks to your natural thievery proficiency. If straightforward damage is what you're after, go for Thief. The name's a misnomer. The only thing you're taking is lives. There's a certain irony to the rogue, don't you think? Their character fantasy is all about fighting dirty, yet they have so many more rules they have to follow just to use their main class feature. Still, the extra damage and debuffs in combat, paired with all the extra tools outside of combat, ensure your usefulness at every stage of the game, making all those hoops you jump through worth it. I mean, you're probably master in acrobatics anyway. Jumping through hoops shouldn't even require a check. But before you play, do yourself a huge favor. Put a rubber band around your wrist, repeat the phrase, "It's what my character would do," over and over, and snap the rubber band each time until you can't say it without wincing.